A Greek Orthodox priest has actually come out and rebuked the phenomenon of the Orthobros online. We're going to talk about what that is and why it's important, as well as an update to the situation with John Henry Weston and LifeSite News. All of that coming up next. Let's go ahead and do a deep dive here into this homily from an Eastern Orthodox, in particular Greek Orthodox priest with the Annunciation Greek Orthodox Church in Rochester, New York. He's been saying some really interesting things and even challenging the Orthobros as of late. And here he is on YouTube delivering a pretty interesting homily where he is critical of the phenomenon of the Orthobros. And what exactly are the Orthobros? Well, you probably heard this term before. I know I've spoken about it tremendously, very frequently. Orthobros is a designation given to some Eastern Orthodox online who are not necessarily representative of the official Eastern Orthodox position, but they're incredibly vocal, very loud on social media, usually very bombastic with highly controversial positions that, again, often do not reflect the position or positions of the Eastern Orthodox churches that they profess to be in communion with. Sometimes they're not actually in full communion. Sometimes they're not practicing their faith. There's different situations. But of course, a lot of these Orthobros are highly influenced by figures like Jay Dyer, among others. And so when this priest calls this out, that's what he is calling out. And it's kind of refreshing to see some clergy attempting to deal with this problem because, frankly, as I've said before, hats off to the Orthodox clergy for attempting to deal with this stuff, as juxtaposed to, in many cases, Catholic clergy that turned a blind eye to what's going on in Catholic or on Catholic social media with the equivalent of your Orthobros, but the Catholic equivalent version on social media. Often that goes unchallenged, but we're starting to see some pushback from Orthodox bishops and also priests warning people about this stuff. So, hats off to them for attempting to curtail some of this stuff that they're encountering. Let's go ahead and watch it together. It's pretty short, very, very brief here. Let me know if you have any difficulty in hearing the audio. Let's go ahead and begin. Somebody said there's no sound. Thank you for letting me know. Let's go ahead and try it one more time. Make sure to enable audio. Let's start here. Here we go.
I've noticed this term that has come into the vernacular of not only orthodoxy, but also on some online commentary. And this is a term that is called orthobro. And I guess it stands for Orthodox brothers. All right. But it seems that this word has taken on a not so gracious commentary. So over the last number of years, and I'd say probably the last 5 or so years, we've seen quite an influx of young men and women, 20s, 30s, young families, coming to our Orthodox church. And that's a marvelous thing. That's a wonderful and a beautiful thing, for they are seeking something that they are not finding in other Christian churches.
Especially in Catholicism, a lot of Catholics are leaving for Eastern Orthodoxy. I spoke about that in my book, Answering Orthodoxy, showing that Catholics are leaving for Eastern Orthodoxy for all the wrong reasons and for all the reasons that they'll encounter actually, shockingly, within Eastern Orthodoxy. So the things they're reacting against and trying to get away from, they'll find in Eastern Orthodoxy, as well as a new set of problems. So yeah, I talk about that in my book, Answering Orthodoxy. But that's what he's referring to. A lot of Catholics are going Eastern Orthodox. A lot of Protestants are going to Eastern Orthodox, stuff like that. Yeah.
All right. And there's a number of reasons and things, and we don't need to elaborate on those right now. But the beauty of them coming into the church is something wonderful. Unfortunately, when they come in with some baggage. Okay, and some of that is things that they have to unlearn from either their Catholic upbringing or from their Protestant upbringing, but also maybe some of them are unchurched and they have preconceptions of what the church is supposed to be and what it actually is.
They also have preconceptions of what Catholicism is, and it often doesn't actually align with Catholicism. And then they'll bring that into Eastern Orthodoxy and further solidify the Eastern Orthodox rhetoric against Catholicism. I see it all the time. I've experienced it firsthand when I became Eastern Orthodox. And so it was incredibly awkward becoming Eastern Orthodox and having to correct Orthodox about what Catholicism is. It was just a really weird experience.
And so while this is a very exciting time for our church, because these new people have invigorated the vitality of our church so that we're no longer just kind of an ethnic enclave, but we represent now much more of America. However, what we have to be careful of is that we don't become now soldiers in an offensive manner. And what I mean by that is typically the Orthobros characteristics include participating in an online engagement in the faith. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I'm participating in online orthodoxy and online participation of the faith. But many times that's done in a very harsh and critical manner. And it's directed at people of not only other Christian faiths, but also other faiths in general. So it creates kind of this harsh attitude of superiority. Are we the fullness of the faith as orthodoxy? Of course we are. But we never claim to be ourselves superior over anybody else. And then the most dangerous of all is that it ties orthodoxy into political ideologies. And political ideologies have no place in the church.
That's interesting. Political ideologies have no place in the church. So there's no room for any kind of political ideology in Eastern Orthodoxy. So Orthodoxy doesn't call for any kind of political position and stance. I don't know about that one, but I think you can see similar things, of course, in Catholic circles with people having certain ideologies, political ideologies, thinking that it represents Catholicism, and then they're confronted with cognitive dissonance when they go to the local parish and see it's something completely different. I mean, it's the same cognitive dissonance you get if you look at the history of these beautiful Gothic cathedrals with gorgeous liturgies, and then you're confronted with the average Novus Ordo parish. It's kind of that same cognitive dissonance. And so I think it actually exists on both sides, Catholicism and Eastern Orthodoxy.
Orthodox, Catholic, Protestant, doesn't matter. Politics has no place. We can comment on the morals and the ethics of our politicians, of our government organizations, of who we are, but that's done in coffee hour. That is never done here inside the church. Now, this is important because the vast majority of people that we as a community have brought into the faith have come through curiosity about orthodoxy, and their first point of contact is online. They tell me, I have seen your videos, I've watched this, but I've watched this guy and I've seen this woman comment, and so this is their first point of contact. And so we have to be careful because that creates an impression, many times falsely, of who we are, a very stringent, akrivia-based, and non-compassionate church. And this can cause issues when people come into the church because they're expecting some type of political ideology here. And when they don't find it, they say, this is not the orthodoxy. I thought that you were going to defend me against all the societal ills that are happening in here. That's not what we're here for.
Well, at least he's honest. And that's often what converts find out, is that what they thought Orthodoxy was isn't actually what Eastern Orthodoxy is. And so they then go to what's called true Orthodoxy, non-canonical Orthodoxy, although true Orthodox think that they're canonical Orthodox, and that world Orthodoxy is non-canonical. They're kind of like the Sedevacanist version of Catholicism. I mean, I'm just drawing some analogies, not direct parallels, but that's effectively what it is. Fringe dissenting groups that think that they're the true Eastern Orthodox Church that truly preserve the canons. I've explored some of that here where I've analyzed true Orthodoxy and their various factions on this channel. But that's exactly what happens. They go to your average Orthodox priest who isn't militantly against homosexuals or something, and maybe some of these converts are militantly against any kind of offering of grace to homosexual people. and they become very, very upset with that. Maybe they're trying to flee where in Catholicism a lot of grace is offered to sinners, and they don't like that in some cases. So they go to Orthodoxy where they think they're going to get something that they don't. And then they find out, okay, yeah, Father's not like that, or the bishop's not like that, or even worse, they're trying to flee Catholicism, and then it turns out they go to their local parish, and at their local parish is not only the Orthodox priest and or bishop, but also a Catholic priest and or bishop doing joint vespers together, and they're just thinking, wait, this ecumenism stuff is what I was trying to run away from, but now I'm finding out it's part of Eastern Orthodoxy as well. So yeah, this is pretty common.
We are here to be that silent witness, that voice against those ideologies that are against our Christian values, but we have to be careful how that's done. When we read the sermons of the patristic fathers throughout the ages, what do we see? We see a deep and abiding knowledge of the faith. But equally so, we see it applied with compassion, mercy, and love. Yes, many of the patristic fathers, like St. John Chrysostom, railed against their parishioners about how they were going to the casinos and how they were going to the horse races, and you could spend a little bit more time in church. Of course, they were doing that. But it's the same St. John Chrysostom who says at our Paschal service, even at the 11th hour, draw near, for the feast is ready.
Yeah, but of course, Chrysostom would hold to the canons. And a lot of critics of Eastern Orthodoxy will say, but the bishops are not holding to the canons. And that's why they'll leave Orthodoxy and go elsewhere.
Everything with the patristic fathers centered around love, but with a degree of discipline. And we have to know the place of where our doctrine is important to us. At our Holy Cross Seminary, we are taught something very important. What is the reason that we as priests, deacons, and bishops learn the theology of our church? And it's very clear. Not so that we can hammer somebody over the head with our doctrines and dogmas, but so we can reach any person where they are. From the simplest person who just has a simple faith and doesn't necessarily know doctrine, to be able to speak to them, but at the same time be able to speak to a professor of Protestant theology and talk to them about why we believe what we believe as Orthodox. And that study of theology gives us that ability to then speak to the simplest person, and then also to speak then to the most brilliant person. So
I don't think in any kind of consistent way, but okay. By the way, thank you for the super chat. I went to an EOC, when Eastern Orthodox Church one time, and spoke with a priest when I was looking into Orthodoxy, and I kid you not, some parishioners were looking at me like, what is this non-Orthodox doing here? Yeah, not uncommon in Eastern Orthodoxy, and also in some Eastern Catholic churches as well.
So one of the dangers that we see in the Orthobros movement is that many times they lack a spiritual guide. The Orthodox Church calls each one of us, myself included, that we must be under the obedience of a spiritual father. And that spiritual father is an elder, and that elder has life experience and understands how that mercy and compassion can be properly blended with doctrine and dogma.
Yeah, this sounds nice theoretically. In reality, the spiritual directors that I encountered were more ignorant of theology than I was. So it's kind of hard to follow somebody that you know who is theologically in error. And that's been my experience, not only with your average Catholic confessor, but also, again, as I'm pointing out here, Eastern Orthodox priests, confessors, spiritual directors, you name it. Whenever you have to correct the priest on what actually is a sin, and they're trying to tell you something's not a sin when maybe the catechism is clear it's a sin, or the Bible is clear it's a sin, you know that you're not going to be getting very good spiritual direction at that point, because you're at that point having to direct the director. And when you have to direct the director on basic things, there's a problem. This person is not qualified to be a director. So that's often what happens in both circles, Catholic and Eastern Orthodox. So all that sounds nice on paper until you get into reality, until you see orthodoxy in practice.
And so that spiritual father has that ability and has that life experience. And many times what Orthobros does is it will then denigrate the idea and the concept of elders and what they are doing supposedly then to our church.
Yeah, I mean, that's like Jay Dyer when he had that video about he's going to war with the Orthodox churches, church bishops of America, the bishops of the Orthodox Church of America. I don't know if y'all recall that, But yeah, he's at war with Elm. He's at war with the Greek Orthodox. He's at war with some of the Russian Orthodox, whether he realizes it or not. He's at war with his own patriarch, the Patriarch of Moscow, because he's supposed to be Rokor. And they're technically under the Patriarch of Moscow, who affirms that Muslims and Christians worship the same God. He's very explicit about that. Jay vehemently opposes that. So he sees his own communion really as watered down, but not as watered down as Greek Orthodoxy and OCA. And I'm only mentioning him here because he's one of the guys who's kind of leading the charge for the Orthobros. And we've seen that plenty of times. I've reviewed his material many times on this channel and responded to a lot of his arguments. He's actually even been on this channel before. Okay, moving forward.
So spiritual fatherhood is very important in our Orthodox faith because it teaches us discipline and it teaches us obedience. So what I want to say is, let us be cautious. I'm not saying don't watch online. Watch online, that's fine. But let us be discerning that as we enter into our Orthodox faith, we enter into it with love and compassion so that we may get to know Jesus Christ as our Lord and Savior and understand what he has done for us, what the Father's will is, and how the Holy Spirit blesses all of our actions. Those are our focal points, and not for us to hammer new converts into the church with things that they are not doing or things that they should be doing.
So there you go. I mean, I'm glad he's actually addressing it. I think that his criticisms could be a lot stronger. Maybe he's not fully aware of the extent of the nature of the orthobro phenomenon. Maybe at some point he will be, and will come with some stronger criticisms. Not that these weren't sufficient in nature, they were, but I do think that there's actually some even stronger ones. But look, I at least commend him for speaking up. He's going to get a lot of heat from the Orthodox online. He's going to get trolled. He's going to get harassed. He's going to get doxxed. His parish is going to be harassed. They're going to look up his private information and harass him. This is what they do. They did it to me, and why wouldn't they do it to him? I know other priests, Orthodox priests, they've done this too. So it's pretty common. It's the way they behave, and he's bold for speaking up. I'll give him that. Now let's briefly shift gears to take a look at the situation with LifeSite News. Of course, there's been this situation where John Henry Weston was removed from LifeSite News, but now some are reporting that LifeSite board chair says that John Henry Weston's removal was null and void. And Weston is saying that he's still the CEO and needs to be immediately restored. And this current CEO needs to restore all of his rights and stuff like that. So LifeSite board chair member Dominic Ismert has informed company co-founder John Henry Weston that after seeking legal advice, he believes Weston's removal as CEO was illegal. The vote to remove me from the board of LifeSite News and from the CEO, or from the position of CEO, was not carried out in accordance with the bylaws of our organization. Weston said in an email that he sent to all LifeSite staff and board members today with a personal account after speaking with Ismert, therefore, until such time as the board convenes to make a lawful determination on the matter, I remain both CEO and the board of LifeSite News. He added, why would you even want to waste your time with them? You know what this is like? It's like a wife who cheats on you, and then you go back to her for a little bit because you're like, I know you cheated on me, but I don't have like actual video evidence that you cheated on me. And until I have video evidence that you cheated on me, we're going to still stay together. What? What? They don't want you there. Okay. Whether it went through some kind of technical procedure or not, they clearly didn't want you there. Why do you still want to be around them? I don't get that. Okay. I'm sure he has his reasons. Okay. The email, the text of which is below, was promptly removed from staff inboxes by new CEO Robert Hoover, who sent employees a new email condemning the move while also defending Weston's removal. They're also alleging a tyrannical work environment at LifeSite News since he has left, saying that the CEO is running a tyrannical work environment. And so they're making some accusations there, claiming that LifeSite News is censoring journalists and all that. And basically what John Henry Weston is doing is he's saying the CEO needs to restore his access to Teams immediately. And they are calling an emergency meeting, I think it's July 22nd, to discuss the next step forward or something like that. And I don't know how that's going to shake down. But this has been posted. from one account. We need to set a new direction for LifeSite under Leo the 14th pontificate. And one of the board members says, Papa America. Another one says, we can praise his Latin. And John Henry Weston says, we can criticize his continuance of Francis's legacy. And then they throw him out the window. So, there's been rumors that that's why he was removed, because he's, critical of Leo in the same way and the same reasons that he was critical of Pope Francis. I don't know if that's really the reason why he was removed, but that's kind of what they're making fun of. And so the story is still developing. We'll find out more, and we'll see how that goes. Of course, I don't know why anybody would still want to. If they've been removed as CEO, even if it didn't go through the proper procedure, I don't know why they would waste their time. I don't know why they wouldn't just shake the dust off their feet, move on, go establish their own thing. That I don't get. But hey, I'm sure, again, he has his reasons. We'll see how it plays out. I don't know if they're going to end up going to court over the matter. That's what it looks like it might be, but we'll see. Anyways, I wanted to sneak that in so you can be aware of the update, since I've noticed people aren't really talking about it. So I wanted to make sure to inform y'all. Everybody hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you appreciate the content of this channel. See you soon.